We are a convention for fans from all backgrounds, any fans of science fiction, fantasy, horror, gaming, art, and generally just anything geeky at all. That's been one of the fun parts, is expanding outside of like traditional fandom, and because we realize that like people have different kind of stuff they nerd out about, right? It could be history or science or fountain pens, whatever it is. The common thread is that there's a strong interest in something that you want to share with people. So that's the point of conventions in my book, but also Multiverse in particular, is let everybody get together in an environment where everybody feels welcomed and included, like genuinely included. And it happens every October, third weekend of every October. This year it's October 20th through 22nd in Atlanta, which I figure most people know. At the Westin Atlanta Perimeter North, all the stuff's at multiversecon.org.
For this episode, we welcome that intro a little bit better there on that one, but welcome everybody to another spotlight on the multiverse. Before I was doing like the intros for everybody, but I figure I'm taking up your airtime, so I want you guys to introduce yourselves and talk to people. So with that being said, I have the awesome Keith Cross with me here tonight, and so Keith, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and and then we'll get talking about all the wonderful things that we're going to talk about.
Okay, cool. Hey, everybody. My name is Keith Cross. Thanks for having me, Joe. I appreciate it. I am a retired tattoo artist, currently a graphic novelist working on my comic series called Day Black, which is about a vampire tattoo artist, to make a long story short, and something I've been working on for about 20 years. Of course, self-publishing has its ups and downs, but I love the freedom from being away from a traditional publisher. And I'm just super excited to be a part of Multiverse, man. It's an awesome event. I went there last year, I think it was last year, may have been the year before, but either way, had an awesome time. Great people. Everybody's treating me great. Can't wait to do it again, man.
You mentioning off camera when we were talking to each other that it was you and another guy, so you reap those rewards a little bit from the vending aspect of Multiverse. Talk a little bit about your experience in vending at Multiverse. What have you found that people gravitated towards, and is it a different type of selling when you know that you're kind of one of just a couple people there that are selling comic books, or does it get it a little bit easier for you?
Well, in a way, I will say initially I was kind of reluctant to even do the con, just because, previously I had only done Comic Cons. So I was like, I really didn't think anybody was going to be interested in comics. This isn't a comic convention, so it's going to be a bunch of people that's not interested in that. But I actually found it to be the exact opposite. And I really think all of those kind of reservations kind of melted away, because I found that a lot of people, being that I was one of the only comic book artists there, I think it was one other guy there, we were kind of a rarity in a place that was kind of, everybody was kind of had the same type of thing going on. Mm-hmm. So I think just the fact that we stood out, and the fact that we were both two black guys, that also made us stand out a little bit more, but in a great way. It was never awkward. It was always super friendly and welcoming, and that also is a plus. But I found that as far as my sales strategy, it was really the same. I think it's really the same. I mean, they're comics, but they still aren't that far apart. It's still fantasy, it's still fiction. It's just in a different genre or a different form. So once you just kind of get over that initial outlier feeling, you really kind of feel at home and like, oh, this is really, really no different, So that was it, man. I had a great experience, and I turned on a lot of people that didn't read comics, that strictly, were just strictly there for one thing, and I kind of turned them on to comics in that way. So that was a win too.
Nice. Where were you at? Do you remember where you were at in the hall?
I know I may have been in Artist Alley. I'm not sure, because I know.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we were in a big room, and I know there were. I know my.
No, that's the vending hall. Yeah.
Yeah, my table was directly towards the doors, and I could see outside. There was a big fountain outside and everything. So I was right there in the middle, and yeah,
nice. That's a good position.
it
You were
was.
right by
It was.
you were right by the art show then.
I was, and I was
Yeah.
looking. I was like, dang, I wanted to get on there too. I was like, is it too late for me to, but it was too late at that point. So I think this year I'm gonna try to see if I can get in, show some of my
Nice.
fine art too.
Are you doing any panels or anything like that on
I do believe I'm doing some panels. I'm not sure which
Nice.
ones yet. I did my survey, and I don't think they gave me a definitive list yet, but I plan
Yeah.
to.
It's coming. It's actually, I was just talking to Vanessa about it tonight, so
Okay.
I think we'll get word on what we're all doing here in a few days. So
Okay.
that's going to be fun. That's cool though. You get to do some battles. I think that's the really interesting thing about Multiverse this year. The wrinkle that's been added a little bit. I know they did a little test run last year of the art track having kind of a panel-esque, spot in the multiverse, verse. But this year it's a full-on all weekend event for them, and so that's going to be awesome. Are you doing any of like the interactive ones that Mason was telling me about, or you're going to be drawing and showing people how to draw a little bit?
Ooh, no, man, I am deathly afraid of. I hate when people stand over me when I'm drawing.
Yeah.
So to do it on a big scale, I'll have so much anxiety. So I know they asked, but I was like, I'll be way self-conscious now.
I find that about most artists, though.
Yeah, I like to keep a little mystique, about how I create it. And plus,
yeah. Yeah, if everybody could do it, you put you out of business, right?
Right. I'll just go with that answer instead of I'm just deathly afraid of people watching.
Yeah.
I like
We've got some people in the chat. Hi, Anita. Hi, William. Nice to see you both. Are you somebody who at Comic-Con does panels, or do you just strictly are there to sell?
I wish I could get in Comic-Con. Like, man, I get rejected like every year. Like, it's so hard to get into there. But panels have always been a little daunting for me because it's one of those things where you don't really think you really don't think you can talk about something.
But
the thing I've learned about myself is sometimes you never know what you know until someone asks you the right question, and then you're like, holy shit, like how did I'm saying this stuff that you just be surprised how much you backlog in your brain until somebody asks you a question and you realize how much you really know. So that kind of got me back into doing panels, not being so not afraid of doing them, but kind of nervous about doing them. So and then I'm like, when people ask me to do stuff, I'm like, okay, you're asking me, so that means you feel like I can do it. So I'm going to go with your recommendation on me and just believe it too.
Nice. That's awesome. I love that idea. Jesse is here. Hello, Jesse. Nice to see you. So are you somebody that does like, because I've been to like at Dragon Con especially, there's oftentimes at the artist alleyway where I'm watching a lot of comic artists drawing, they're drawing, and they're not doing it to they're doing it, like you said, in kind of cognito while they're selling on top of that idea. Are you somebody who also, do you gain inspiration? Do you feel like you have like some spark of inspiration when you're there, or is it just a matter of necessity? You have to work on something because you have a deadline kind of idea?
Well, I'm always working. So if it like, whenever I have a chance, like say we get a rush, that's great. But when it slows down, I'm like, perfect. I got a chance to like knock out some pages while I'm here.
Nice.
So I never miss a moment to draw because I always have something to draw. Like there's always something to do, to the point where I can't even really enjoy the medium that I work in. Like I buy tons of comics and books, but I don't read them. Like I never get a chance to read them because whenever I start reading, I'm like, a little voice in the back of my head is like, what are you doing? You have your own story to write. You have your own book to draw. Why are you reading this right now? So I have to put stuff down and just focus. So when I'm at cons, the biggest inspiration for me is when people either have heard of my book and are fans and come to meet me and come to get their book signed, or just the interaction with people, just hearing people's feedback and what they like, what they don't like. All of that stuff is inspiration to me. And I think that's what cons are for. Like, really, it's great to sell stuff, but it's really that interaction with people to really kind of read the temperature of your audience and like future, audience members. Like it's all beautiful,
Nice. Jesse says everyone has imposter syndrome. Great idea to listen to other people's assessments.
Yeah, imposter syndrome. Yeah, like I said, man, I used to struggle with that a lot. Like I went to, I think the first con that actually flew me out. I think it might have been a Denver con or something like that in Denver, Colorado. And when I got there, it was nothing but like soccer moms and their cheerleader daughters, like all of like everybody. It wasn't who I thought was my audience. But when I got there, I was like, oh, okay. And then as I was doing panels, I was surprised that so many of them had read my book, and the imposter syndrome just melted away. It's like you really have to, if you doubt yourself, just trust when other people believe in you, because they can see something in you that you don't see in yourself and can really open your eyes to it, you know? So I always remember when you get imposter syndrome that you are there to do what you do, and that's it. Don't try to do what anybody else is doing. Be yourself. And there's no way you can be an imposter if you're being yourself, you know?
Nice. So let's talk about yourself a little bit. Day Black is your series, and you. How far along are you, and how much further do you have to go? Is it a never-ending series? I mean, with comics, it's a little interesting because you could technically go forever with a series. But do you have an end game in mind for Day Black, or is it something you're just kind of going by the seat of your pants and just going with it and seeing how far you can take it?
Well, initially, it started when I was doing tattoos full time. It just became something that I did to kind of document the customers that I would meet, because I would just hear a lot of outrageous things and stories, and I would just document them. And it also gave me a chance to kind of say things that I couldn't necessarily say back to the clients, like "you're such an idiot," or "you're so beautiful," or just anything that I couldn't say professionally, I could put it into this book. So initially, it just started out as just kind of an outlet for me until I started to. This is when then Facebook came along, and I started to upload pages, and slowly but surely, consistently, I would upload pages like weekly. And then a publisher approached me and wanted to publish me, and I said, "Cool," and we did that. So from that point, I definitely took it seriously. I definitely looked at it as an ongoing project, but I started this thing when I was probably 25, and I'm 46 now.
Nice.
So, and you know, of course, I only have 2 volumes. Only have 2 volumes. It should have been more, but I really don't feel like I'm a traditional comic book artist, because those guys, they meet deadlines, they draw insanely. You know, like I'm not that type of artist. I'm the type of artist that has to do it upon inspiration, which is why self-publishing serves me, because you know when you have a publisher, you can't go by inspiration all the time.
Right.
So I always consider myself to be not a comic book artist, but an artist that made a comic book. So it's kind of I look at the whole series as a piece of art, like a body of work that I'm doing. I do have a definite end for it, because I have other stories that I want to do, and it's like this is a story I started in my 20s, so of course I have other stories that are just like in my head, like when are you gonna get to us? And I'm like, I have to see this through. You know, I have to see it through, because even when you think people aren't looking, when you are listening or reading, when you find out they are, you realize it's not about you anymore. You know, you really have to cater to these fans who supported you, and it's fulfilling in yourself too to do it. You know, to really see something from beginning to end. But I do have a definite end for it. I have a Kickstarter that's going to be launching next month for the next issue. So that's a testament to, you know, I'm pushing through. And this is after me not having worked on it for probably about 5 years. I parted ways with my publisher in like maybe 2017, 2018. I got a kidney transplant in 2020, or smack dab in the middle of COVID. So I had to deal with just the healing process and, you know, the mental, you know, reconstruction of just, you know, just putting myself back together.
Sure.
And not having a publisher, you know, not being at my full health, all of these things work against you creatively and really dare you to even want to keep doing it. But I'm glad I found the strength, and this newest Kickstarter is the testament. You know, I started working digitally for the first time. It's cliche when people always come out with their newest thing. They say it's the best thing ever. This is literally, I know, right? It's the best. This is my best work ever. You know, even though you did classics before this, like I don't care what anybody else says or thinks about the classics. Personally, artistically, professionally, I feel like this is my best project. You know.
Nice. Is it a lot like words where you draw and you just, the more you draw, the better you get, the more the easier it comes to you, the more defining, you find certain ways to convey things emotionally and you know uh, visually that normally maybe you struggled with early on in your career.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think that comes with anything that you do continuously.
Mhm.
You got to get good at it at some point. But especially when you've been working with the same characters in the same world
Sure.
exclusively for so long. I think the biggest challenge has been since I started this book when I was so young. Like when I read the first volume, there's some things that I was like, man, I can't believe I said that, but I was in my 20s. I was like, I would never say this now. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
as I'm writing the current issues, I'm writing it from a person that has grandkids now. You know what I'm saying? So I'm writing it from from a perspective of I want my kids to be able to read this. So let me cut down on the raunch a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I want to be able to show them what daddy's always working on, without, having to tear the page out first like I had to do in my other book. We have a copy of my book in my house that's like maybe 5 or 6 pages ripped out. Like, yeah, check the book out. It may not make a little sense in some areas, but and
You didn't do like the government and just redact the pages, or would that be too much ink?
right. That'd be a lot of ink, man. That'd be a lot of ink. So yeah, I forgot what the question was, but
No, you
is
answered
that
it.
it? Okay, cool.
Yeah. But along the same lines, I find the interesting aspect of the parallels of tattoo artistry versus comic book artistry. I mean, obviously, one is you're drawing on skin and something that breathes and moves, and that's a lot. That takes a lot of discipline and a lot of patience.
Yes.
Often, you know, and I'm curious if you've seen, because of that artistry, your artistry get better because you've had to do that kind of artistry where it's not always, it's kind of like writing on a rock, right?
Mhm.
That idea. And so I'm curious if naturally you feel like both, do they complement one another? Do you feel like your art? I know you said you're retired now, but I'm sure you did some tattooing while you were doing the comic book. Do you feel like one helped the other get you better at one or the other?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like being a fine artist and a tattoo artist, I would notice like whenever I did paintings, I would take that sensibility over into my paintings and vice versa.
Nice.
In Day Black in particular, being that it's a tattoo themed comic, a lot of people that don't even know that I'm a tattoo artist would tell me like a lot of this stuff looks like these could be tattoo designs or these could be, and there's a reason for that,
Yeah.
and a lot of it is unintentional, but a lot of it is intentional because being a tattoo artist, you have to design things that are pleasing to the eye, and you have to design things that people. I mean, but again, that's not to say. I mean, all comic artists like that. You want to draw something appealing, but I feel like sometimes I can get in these pockets where I just like no, like this design should go this way. A lot of the sensibilities in Day Black. If you are a tattoo enthusiast, you'll probably notice those things, but they definitely inform it. And and just one major thing, like in Day Black, the whole book is black and white and red, and that is because initially it was because I couldn't afford to get it colored, and I really didn't have the time or patience to try to do it myself. So I was like, okay, what can I do to make this a part of this world? The reason why it's black and white and red. Well, I made it because in this world, all vampires are colorblind except for the color red. So when they see the color red, it just kind of it just riles them up. You know what I'm saying? It just gets them excited. It hypes them up when they see it. It excites them. So I took that and just made that a part of the universe to kind of just. But at the same time, when you do tattoos on dark skin, a lot of the times we can be limited on the colors we could use. Um, when I was coming up, black people really just got black and red. Red was the only color that really lasted and like for the
Mhm.
long term. So I was like, this is another a piece of tattoo lore that I could put in there just from the black tattoo experience, like black and white and red. So
Yeah. Look, everybody, look at this gorgeousness. This is super gorgeous. I love this.
thank you. Thank you.
This is really cool. You know, you have an interesting way of drawing faces. Talk a little bit about, is that kind of, is that just how you learned it? Is that a signature? Is that by design for this particular series? Talk a little bit about how you draw a face, because that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, man, I don't know. I really don't know. A lot of people told me they look like African masks, or just
Nice.
some. There's
Yeah.
no, there's really no math or there's really no science behind it. That's just how they came out. I could say, I could just tell you some of my biggest influences growing up was like Ralph Bakshi. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah.
Elf Quest, Richard and Wendy Penny, Penny. Um, so yeah, it just came out that way. I liked it to be very simple,
Mhm.
because I learned, and one of the things that I liked about doing comics, and one of the things that separates my comic work from my fine art is black and white work is really meticulous and like really structured. My fine art work is really loose and colorful and vibrant. But I also like to keep the simplicity of it, because if it's too hard to draw, I'm not going to want to draw. You know, and I knew if I was going to want to do a comic book, it had to be kind of loose and still detailed but simple at the same time. And I credit that to The Simpsons. I was a big fan of The Simpsons, but they would always, it's like they could draw the characters doing anything, like any kind of
Yeah.
pose, look realistic, expressions look super believable, but everything was so simple, you know, simply drawn, four fingers, just shapes. And I love that. So that was a huge influence on me, was The Simpsons, just to get a lot of work done, but not kill yourself to try to do it, you know, in the simplest, loosest way possible.
Mhm. I'm curious. Is the picture up in the as I see it on my right, on your right hand side, but it's probably on your left. Is the picture at the very top? Is that Jackie Robinson?
That is Tyler the Creator. Right
Oh, okay.
up here on the bike.
Oh yeah, I thought it was, yeah, because it looked like he was wearing a uniform. So
Yeah, that's Tyler the Creator, painted by Mark Ryden.
okay,
By tip to Mark Ryden.
nice, awesome. Uh, how long have you been drawing? Was it something you did very early on in your life?
Yeah, I would say from what I can remember, middle school. But the thing is, I used to trace a lot. I
Okay.
used to want to draw, but I never thought I could. So I would just trace everything and tell people that I did it. I'm ashamed to say that today, but it's a part of my story, you know. I would trace everything, and just be like, you know, because there was this one girl and everybody just loved her. She was just the best artist. And I wanted to be her so bad. I didn't want to be her, but I wanted to, you know, I wanted that. So I knew something was in me, because apparently I was tracing so much. I wanted to draw apparently, but for some reason, I just never put pencil to paper and try. So my grandfather, who was a full-fledged artist, he was looking at me tracing one day, and he was just like, "Why don't you just try to draw it?" And I was like, "Why didn't I think of that? Like, why don't I just try?" So I took some paper, and I'll never forget, it was an X-Men cover, and I just started drawing. And I'm looking at my hand, and I'm like, I'm drawing, and it's happening. Like, this is not looking that bad, and I'm doing it. So from that point on, it was that was it. I mean, I never traced again. But what's interesting is the way that I draw now. I draw like I trace. Like, I don't use
Mm.
sketchy lines. I draw in straight lines. Everything I draw is like really smooth and really like one line. So it's just weird that came from just tracing all the time, you know. So once I started doing that, of course, I was the go-to guy to draw.
Yeah, sure.
I was drawing to get extra chocolate milk at school. I was drawing for an extra slice of your square pizza. You know what I'm saying? All of that stuff. You know,
Nice.
I was drawing markers on jeans. So anything that I could do. So anybody that knows me now that went to school with me will remember. Like, yeah, he used to draw on the boards. I got kicked out of high school for tagging. I used to tag on everything. I got kicked out my sophomore year because a girl wanted to go to prom, or she wanted to go to the dance with me, some dance they were having. I told her no, and she told the principal on me that I was the person that would write
Oh,
I would write cross everywhere, cross, cross, cross. Nobody put together that my last, you know, nobody put together that it was me, because my last name is actually Crosley, you know, Keith
uh,
Cross. my pen name. So, man, I ramble sometimes, so I'm sorry
No,
about
you're
that.
good. You're good.
And
No, it's all good, man. This is fascinating. I love it. I love all
okay,
this. you know, um, and as long as as far as tracing goes, as Banky would defend it, it gives the shadows and the definition. It's what adds the characters emotions and beauty and
yeah,
depth, right?
yeah. Don't sleep on the tracers, man.
So, I mean, you've been doing this for 20 years now. You've been creating books and drawing characters and putting this together. What do you feel like? Look, if you could look back for just a second, what do you feel like you look at your work, and do you feel like that you would have ever thought you would have been in this position? Do you feel like, you know what, I am really doing something amazing here, and I'm really really proud of it?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this: when I was in, I went to art school at the Columbus College of Art and Design in Ohio. When I went there initially, I majored in film because I wanted to be a filmmaker at one point. But I also took a comic book design class, and at that point, I had no interest in doing comics. I only wanted to read them. I just didn't want. I just never had a desire to draw them, so I lacked off in that class. I didn't pay attention. Like everything I turned in was just like, okay, what's next? So here it is. I'm out of college. Maybe 10 years later, I start wanting to draw comics. Now I can't remember anything from that class. I can't. I don't remember anything they taught. So I'm like, all right. I want to do this comic. I don't remember how I'm supposed to do it. There was no YouTube tutorials at the time. So I'm just going to do this comic. I'm just going to draw it how I want to draw it. And to my surprise, that has been one of the things that people like most about it, is because the way it's crafted is unique to I guess what you would call your standard comic.
Hmm.
And it really wasn't on purpose. It was really just for me not remembering how I was supposed to do it. So sometimes I think like, man, I wonder if I had took that class series, would my book be better, or would it be worse, or would it be less unique, or so who's to say? But
Yeah, I
either
mean,
way, if you got the passion, and it just goes to show, like, today's comics are so, there's really no rules. You can do it however you want to do it nowadays. You know what I'm saying? But back then, it was more like it has to be the Marvel way. So
yeah, and I asked that question, and not to put you on the spot, or make you feel like you should be looking back or anything like that, but you have an interesting history with comics as well. Reading in your bio that you were a big fan of '70s raunchy comics, and that you would used to hide them from your mom. And you can even see that subtle influence in what you've been, what just the covers that I just showed, and I'm curious it if that sense of rebellion still is something that you still draw upon. Is that something that you really grasp toward? I know you said you've been paring down the raunchiness a little bit because of
yeah,
your kids, but there is still a way to be rebellious and ink with that kind of passion, right?
yeah, absolutely. I will say that growing up, my dad was a strip club owner, so I was kind of in a certain, like, I would see him I would visit him every summer when I was a kid.
Mhm.
My mother moved to Atlanta. So every summer I would be down there. And I always look kind of old for my age. So my dad I had a full beard when I was probably like 15, maybe 16. Also, everybody in my school thought I was a narc because of that. I had to get over that stigma too. But just being in that environment, probably at younger than I probably should have, and being exposed to those type of things. And I think my dad might have had a copy of Fritz the Cat,
Mm.
and I found that. And once I saw that, I was like because it was so. And maybe that's just my own sensibilities, that I just like. But the social commentary, the violence, the beauty,
Yeah.
the realism of it, it just spoke to me. So I really just wanted to do something that would be seen on that level, even if it's not something that gets massively huge. I just want to create something to that pantheon of sensibilities of those type of comics for some reason, because they are never really hugely successful, but
Yeah.
it's just it fulfills me, and especially for especially for Black artists, like we don't see a lot of those type of stories. I don't know a lot of people. I don't know a lot of my peers that are really into those type of books. Of course, they'll name off X-Men and Avengers, and those were comics that I love too. These comics were more. I don't know. It's just something about the subversiveness of it that just appeals to me. I can't explain it. I know my mom, like when she looks back, because she would buy me these comics, not knowing. She would buy me Robert Crumb books. Like looking back, I was like, "Mom, did you see this cover? Like, do you see what this? You saw the cover?" She just would buy me stacks of comics, and I would just put them in there under the back, like, And so at a so
it's funny because like you and I are kindred spirits in that respect, because like during my time uh, while Secret Wars is probably my favorite comic series of all time, I really love that series, but uh Marvel and DC never really did it for me. I was always into like the graphic novels. Like there was one called Blood that I was really into, and then I got into Harvey Pekar, and that was like that changed everything for me. And like I would read those religiously, and just be like, I'd be so excited. Like he would be in the very back behind like Thor 37 or something. Like they would put him like they would put him way in the back because I think they weren't allowed to like actually stock them on the shelves, but
yeah, actually, I remember my publisher told me, he was like, "Look, we could do it like this, but do you want your books in the nudie mag section, or do you want to front with the rest of the books?" So,
yeah, it's just interesting to me. But so I really appreciate that there's somebody who really did that as well, because I always felt like weird that I was just reading that, and at 10, 11 years old, I'm reading probably things that were way too sophisticated for my young mind,
Absolutely. Look at us now,
Yeah. It hasn't got much better for me, to be honest. But no, I'm kidding. Interesting thing about I'm curious is you mentioned that a lot of Day Black comes from stories you were told or things you've experienced as a tattoo artist. Is there stories in there that you're holding to the vest that you haven't released yet, or that you couldn't tell because they were so raunchy?
I have stories that, oh yeah, man, look, the first draft of Day Black.
You don't have to tell the story. I'm just saying.
I'm not, but I'm just saying it was so. It might as well have been a Kama Sutra book, And for me, it was more about, oh man, I draw these people. I draw sexy women really good. I should draw them on every page,
Yeah.
I can draw people doing this so good. I should draw, but just because you can do it doesn't mean you have to,
Yeah.
But I do have stories that that are probably too telling, that I think if someone read, they would put pieces together of who I was talking about.
Gotcha.
But actually, the majority of it, no, it's free game. Like a lot of the stuff, I still have stories that I want to tell. And it's just about doing it the right way. And of course, once I stopped tattooing, that kind of has shifted the focus more on a bigger story. Like the tattooing now is more of a backdrop, it's just a backdrop of the story. But now it's getting a little bit broader as my life experiences have gotten broader. I'm not really limited to just him doing tattoos all the time. So, yeah.
Do you find you're tapping into your filmmaking sensibilities a little bit with what you're writing now? A little bit more? Is it a little bit more cinematic for you?
Yeah. Well, I always, like I was saying, I wanted to go to school for film at first, just because when the first time I saw Pulp Fiction, that's when I wanted to make movies. That's when I wanted to be like, I remember in the movie theater, I was like, this is what I want to do. Like before that movie came out, everything was just movies to me. Like it's just a movie, But when I saw Pulp Fiction, it really sparked something in me, and I didn't want to draw, I wanted to make movies. So long story short, when I started to write Day Black, or I would buy screenplays, like I would buy all the Tarantino screenplays, Gus Van Sant screenplays, Jacob's Ladder, anything that I could find that was in screenplay form, I would read it. And when I started to write Day Black, I started to write like screenplays. So it wasn't far off until then where I had wrote a screenplay. And we actually shot a short film. You can see it on my website, dayblackcomic.com. We shot a short 19-minute film. But currently, Day Black actually was optioned by CBS in 2020. So we've been developing that for a while now. It's a very, very slow process. I was really excited, but it's a very hurry up and wait type situation.
Oh yeah.
So so especially with the writer's strike, I don't know what's going on. So just the fact
if it's already been optioned, they can make it if they really want to. But
right. They can make it. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go for it. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I get option. They option it every year, so I really make more money off of that option payment than I make off of the comic. So, like, look, if we don't want to make it, that's cool. Just let me get these. I mean, no, I'm not saying that, but it's just nice.
Yeah.
It's just a great feeling when there are people that believe in your project and are working towards it. That's the ultimate validation. Like, these people don't know me. They love the book. They love the concept. They're putting their money where their mouth is. So that in itself motivates me to keep going. Whenever I'm like, I'm just going to hang it up and just, no, we got to see it out, man.
Yeah. Now with Paramount Plus too, and the fact that the writer's strike is happening, content is king at this point. So it Absolutely. May get made a lot faster than it probably wouldn't have if the strike hadn't happened. So.
Yeah, and actually, and since the strike happened, the actors have a lot more time because, like, we just had 2 major stars get a copy of Day Black and they love it. But normally they wouldn't have the time to even look at it. You know what I'm saying? But now everybody, I think, is kind of getting their ducks in a row for when things, get back ready. So hopefully they get back ready. I wish they just pay these people, man. Just do the right thing,
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, it's going to help you in the long run too. You'll get a little bit more on the every time that they decide to shelf it.
Absolutely. So until hopefully they're not like, you know what, but not going to let that happen. They don't get like, let's just call it cut our losses. But luckily that hasn't happened yet. So
that's fantastic, man. I love hearing that. I mean, I hate that it collects dust in that never-ending vault of theirs that collects dust. But hey, you get paid for it. I think a lot of times too, when especially if it's like a junior executive that found it, or you were introduced to the person that knows the person that knows the person, and they get it up to that level where you do get optioned and you start talking contracts and things like that. I think often they shelf it so that they can either wait for the trend to happen. When vampires come back into vogue, I'm sure they're thinking, well, what do we have that's vampire-ish? Oh, we've got this thing here now.
Yeah, and I learned that
it's unique and different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I learned from doing a lot of pitch meetings. I remember we did a pitch with AMC, and at the time they were like, well, we like it, but we have something similar coming down the pipeline. And then like a couple months later, Interview with a Vampire came out. You know what I'm saying? That iteration, when I watched it, I was like, damn, this is damn close to what Day Black, what I envisioned it to kind of look like. So I understand, a lot of it is not even if they like it, they could love it, but if it doesn't fit in what they have or what they need, or they're, it's hard, it's easier to sell comedies than it is drama. You know what I'm saying? So I found, like, me and my showrunner, we actually, when we worked together on the pilot episode, we really had to punch up the comedy a bit to just try to sell it. And at first I was kind of like, well, I didn't want to be like, well, I didn't mean for. Look, man, I'm trying to I'm flexible. You know what I'm saying? And the great thing is, they have me in the process with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're doing it in tangent with me. They don't do anything without talking to me, which I also value, because I know that doesn't always work out like that.
Yeah.
So as long as I can kind of help steer the ship, I'm willing to compromise. Every relationship, you got to compromise something.
That's the key, especially at that level. You have to compromise. You have to. And I think I think also, I was also going to say that CBS values you very much. So if they keep paying you for it, because they don't want anybody else to have it, so they're holding on to it for themselves because they think it's that good. So that's a compliment in itself.
It's great. I love it, man. It's great. And you get caught up in everybody's really nice and friendly, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, always, why they're just being nice. They don't know you. They just want to get what they can get out of you. But you have to realize, of course they do. Everybody wants something.
I would tell you that's not a good thought to have, but it is the actually greatest thought you could have. Having been in those rooms and seen those conversations and having been a part of that machine, I can tell you it's a horrible, horrible business. But if it gets people to make your stuff, that's all that matters. Nothing else matters.
Exactly.
So, well, Keith, it's been a wonderful conversation, my friend. I really appreciate. Yeah, we're getting toward the time. Yeah, but I really appreciate you coming here and talking to me and sharing a different experience of multiverse that I don't think a lot of people knew was around. So definitely, everybody needs to go and see Keith when he's there at his booth in October and check out this amazing graphic novel set that he's got going on, and tell everybody where they can find you beyond Multiverse, so that the audience who won't be attending Multiverse, I don't know who wouldn't be at this point, but whoever is out there, I'm sure there's some people out there. So tell everybody where they can find you and learn more about Day Black.
Sure. dayblackcomic.com. That has everything on it. Also, it has an email list. So if you send me your email, I could get you signed up or notify you when the Kickstarter comes. And, the Kickstarter is going to have copies of the old book plus the newest issue and just a lot of other goodies that you can get. So dayblackcomic.com.
Awesome. Well, sir, I will stop by and see you in October, and we'll have more conversations. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Joe. And you have the coolest name, man, Joe Compton. I love it, man. Thanks.
Thank you. It followed me. I was a kid of the '80s, and I grew up I actually was born pretty close to Compton, believe it or not.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm from Southern California, and it followed me for a while. So
very cool, man.
All right, everybody. We'll be right back. Here's a little message from our sponsor, and then we'll bring on Bill Fitzer to talk a little bit about what he's going on in Multiverse and his stuff. So everybody, hanging on tight.
Regardless what's out there for you, your body is your temple. Isn't it time for you to take control of your own fitness and well-being? To tell your story. In Dungeons & Dragons, Chaotic Good is a character alignment that reflects one whose heart is pure, but who does not take the law at face value. They question authority and forge their own path based on their own value system and morals. They value freedom and individuality over social norms and rules. CG Fitness views fitness and health in the same way. We are client-centered, body-positive. We focus on the individual client's needs and goals without trying to fit them into the standards set up by the fitness industry. Each client has a unique background, goal, and body that deserves to be valued and considered when working together. We don't expect all of our clients to look, act, and feel or need the same thing. Some clients want weight loss programs. Some join us for the pain management and reduction. Others have worked with us for pre-surgical body change needs. No matter why you come to us, we will find a way to help you level up. There is no one-size-fits-all magical answer to fitness and health goals, and there is no one-size-fits-all body shape. There's no quick, easy route to take. Making health improvements is hard work, but we are here to guide you through the journey. CG Fitness is about making improvements at your pace for you. So now let's pull out your character sheet and roll for that initiative. So if you're interested in how Kira and her team can help you, you can go to chaoticgoodfitness.com/services. So choose your path to better health and good fitness and tell your own story at chaoticgoodfitness.com.
All right, hello everybody, welcome back, and I have Bill Fetzer with me. Is it Fitzer?
Feetzer.
So,
Feet and sir, yeah.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. Very German.
tell everybody a little bit about yourself, sir, and what you write. And have you been? Is this your first multiverse, or you been before?
It's my first multiverse. Yes,
Right.
I heard about. I'm coming to this from the thriller mystery. Right.
Nice.
Those are my first two novels were along that line. The first one, Penal Fires, was really about it was a psychological mystery based on my experiences as a student in Madison during the '60s and the aftermath. And then by the time that was published, I was also a librarian at the University of Minnesota, and I was the chair of the metadata committee for the American Library Association. And this is about 20 years ago. And so all these things are coming about, about identity and identity theft and metadata. And this is all coming across my desk, because we were in charge of trying to make a statement for the library community at the time. And this is about 1999, 2000. And all this sounded really good to me. I said, "See, there's an element, there's the material here for a novel," and it became my second book, Metadata Murders, which is about the loss. A internet security expert receives an email. You got to remember, this is 20 years ago, so that was all new. But when he follows up on it, when he looks at it, checks out the link, and it looks like it's a video of his estranged daughter, whom he hasn't seen for over a year, and it looks like it's a snuff film. She's murdered, and when he goes to check on her, she's gone. Everything, all of her background, her phone's been disconnected. Nobody knows where she is, including his ex-wife. What's happened to her? Was this real or not? And that experience writing that kind of led me to what's real and what isn't. And so even though it was a straight ahead mystery with those technical overtones, that was still a question that really intrigued me. And it's interesting listening to Keith, because so many things that he says resemble my experience. And it was about the same time. It was also about the time when I came to this realization. Anne Rice had written Interview with the Vampire, and that was very popular. And I thought, well, gee, I would like to do something like that, but I really don't believe in vampires. And so I was, looking around, and my wife has gotten very involved in healing with Reiki, and we were just talking about it, and said about how it works and everything like that, and their experiences treating patients and things. And I said, what about, what do you always employ? It's the good Reiki. And she said, and what about, is there such a thing as bad Reiki? And I don't know. And so there's a typical husband. And and she said, oh, we never talk about that. Yeah. Well, what if somebody did? What about this side? And so I started exploring it, and I combined that with the paranormal and with psychic vampires. And we all know people who walk into a room. You say that they walk in a room, they drain all the energy out of it. Yeah. Well, what about have people who actually live on this? And I sort of took a page out of an old Star Trek episode. If I remember the one, they go to so many planets, so it's hard to say. But one of them where they're fighting these creatures that's feeding off. He's causing all this animosity between the crew and the Klingons, and he's feeding off of that energy and all that hate, and just making it worse and worse. And so he's getting stronger and stronger. And I thought, this is how my vampires could work. And then I was doing some background research and kind of tied it in with a group of people they no longer exist, although the religion does. It's Zoroastrianism. But there is a rare offshoot of that. where they for a time they controlled the entire Middle East, and they're kind of the basis for the Noah mythology that we have in the Christian religion. And those people were supposedly people who live forever.
Mm-hmm.
When they would go and fight, they would, you could knock them down, but you could never kill them. Well, that was basically an optical illusion, because most of the fighting back then was done in chariots and was done from quite a distance. And so they would just replace you when somebody fell. Somebody would step forward and look as though the guy had gotten up and was back. And so that became the basis for the first two books in my series, Escape from the New Immortals, Mission Soul Rescue and Mission Soul Sacrifice. I just developed that, and that's now I'm in the beta stage with the third novel. I'm just finished the first draft that does a sort of talks about how some of these issues or the sidelights in the story, in the main story, how these things happened. It fills in some of the background that my readers have been asking me about. And
nice.
So I plan to have that out on my website, in the next couple months. So that's the basis of my background and what I write.
It's interesting to me, in terms of your history and who you were, in the library system for so long and being a librarian. I want, doing research, you must have some really great insight on how to narrow in on research a little better. And you were there probably pre-internet, and then as the internet changed the library system a little bit and changed everybody's lives, really.
Oh yes, definitely.
Is there a way to kind of utilize both in your perspective? Do you still utilize the library in your research?
Oh yes, definitely. But I when you talk about being a rebel, again, I've been at this. I'm retired now, but when I was one of the few that said, well, "Gee, Wikipedia isn't that bad," and that was just heresy in the library community. And and you say, well, and then later on, I was teaching English and how to write, and I do the same thing, and they'd say, how can you suggest that? Their sources are not reliable and all that. Well, you teach the students about reliable sources, and what you don't stop there. That's just where you get to the end. Yeah. And for a good general introduction to most subjects, depending on how they're written, of course, they can be overly technical, but for the most part, that's a good way to start. You look at the sources at the bottom. If they don't have any, or if they seem dubious, and the people now are they tend to be more sophisticated. They can see where something is, whether it comes from a good source or not.
Right. Sure.
And that's and you teach them how to do that. I know I was a reference librarian for a while too. And you have your go-to standard sources, but over time, it's just like being a writer. You develop and grow as a researcher, and you have certain places. Oh, I know where to go and find out the definite, scuttlebutt about that, and that's what makes you valuable as a source for people when they come to you and they have problems, and that's a lot of fun. Doing the research. I mean, I know writer will tell you research is half the fun, and then some of the worst books are written because they put it all in. But
yeah.
but you want that background. I always like to have that base. That's why the things I write, they're grounded in reality. But I want to question. Well, gee, what is possible? And when I talk about with my paranormal. Where do science and religion, where do they meet? That's really the issue I'm personally exploring, even though I'm talking about psychic vampires and the downfall of nations, really, when it comes down to it.
I feel like sometimes watching the news sucks the energy right out of me. So I can totally relate to the idea of getting your energy sucked from you, because I think there's a lot of people who would relate to that in a lot of aspects. And it's interesting that you would use that platform for something like that. So it's kind of cool. I like that idea.
You really don't know where so much of it when doing the research, like all the mysteries back in Greek times, the Hellenic times.
Yeah.
Well, those were all stage props. They would go and they would have these mysterious caves and stuff like that. And it turns out that even the engineers back in those times could make the doors swing open and make it look like it was all done magically and stuff like that. And to me, it's still amazing. I'm old enough that when I look at a cell phone, I'm amazed at what the information you have at your fingertips is incredible. Yeah. So, I grew up, when Keith was, it was an excellent interview when he was talking about his inspiration. I saw Star Trek. That just inspired me. And I thought, how could anybody have a tricorder? But we've been, now, 40 years later, we've got one, and even better.
Yeah. It's very fascinating. Yeah. Growing up, I never thought we'd ever, I always thought that 2001 and, 2010 were like mysteries that of future times that we would never, ever explore. And here we're well past it now, and kind of like, well, Kubrick had some really good predictions then, kind of idea. But yeah,
we still haven't gotten to the point where we can just go and fly to the moon. Yeah. I don't think that's too far off.
But what I really appreciate about something like that, and this goes along with writing thrillers, because I do as well. I write thrillers. I write crime thrillers, but I write thrillers for the most part. At least that's what I've published so far. Mm-hmm. But writing thrillers, the idea of storytelling and preying on fear and preying on the unknown and kind of exploring that. I think a lot of Star Trek does a lot of that in a lot of the movies that are a little bit darker, a little bit more harder themed. Mm-hmm. But that idea of that kind of storytelling, if you watch 2001, it's well past us. That's in the past now, but it's like that storytelling element is still there, and it's it can. We're all thinking about it right now with AI coming out.
Yeah. Well, look, you just think about the monolith in 2001. Mm-hmm. What is it? What does it mean? It's so mysterious because it's so simple. I mean, it's just a stone slab, and it's affected us, and it leads to all these different discoveries. And that's kind of what when I have my main character is, because it's involving paranormal. He's a psychic psychologist and a shaman, actually. And he's gone into the Amazon to learn shamanism so that he can meld his psychological background with the ability to enter people's minds and find out what's ailing them. And of course, this gets him into trouble, because right away he runs into this group of vampires who the last thing they want people to know is that they can control people's minds and that they can feed off of their mental energies. So the conflict is set up. It may be a little complicated to get there, but once you get there, there's definite conflict.
Have you? I'll ask you the same question I asked Keith. Do you have an end game in mind? Do you know when this series is going to end, or are you writing right now to kind of discover that?
That's an interesting question. I thought about it because I thought that my series would be 4 books. Uh-huh. But then when I sent my manuscript to my publisher originally, she broke it into 2 volumes. That's why we have book 1 and book 2. And so now when I sent the third installment to my editor, she said, "Well, have you thought about breaking this up into two?" And so it's like it's multiplying by itself, and maybe I'll have 8 by the time I'm done. But I do have an end in mind. I definitely I've got the third book back, and I'm taking her comments and suggestions, and regarding them, and maybe it'll be 2, maybe it won't, but 2 separate books. But then the fourth one, I'm about halfway done writing the first draft, and I know where I want it to end. I don't know how it's going. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I know where it's going to end, but I don't know how. I'm an organic writer, and I write and I sit down. Well, I don't know how I'm going to do this, and I get into my characters, and they got to get in and out of the scene, and all of a sudden I've got a bunch of pages written. And so every day's like that. So I go, it's new to me too. And I think that's what hopefully keeps it fresh when people read it, because when I wrote it, it was fresh. I really didn't have any real idea. How am I going to get them through the door? It's like, Raymond Chandler used to say, if you can't think of anything else, just have a guy come through the door with gun blasting,
Yeah.
So you try to stay away from that as much as possible.
Right. Yeah. Are you finding, I've an interesting element to this? Were you always interested in writing? This is something you've always wanted to do, because you're doing it
but I
a little
didn't
bit later in your
realize that.
life.
I'm again listening to you interviewing with Keith. I started out. I really go back a ways, but the Walter Farley books really enchanted me.
Yeah.
All about horse racing.
Yeah.
And I drew a cover for a novel that I was going to write. But I got the nice cover and everything, and I thought, I don't know anything about horse racing. I'm maybe 12, I think, and so I let it. It was just this empty cover, and I thought, and then when I was going through high school and college, it was all about the space race, and everybody had to become an engineer and all that kind of stuff, and it was when I got to college as an undergrad, I realized that I simply wasn't engineering material, and I really enjoyed writing. And so I thought at the time, that's what I was going to become a professor. But I got into grad school after I got out of the Army, and it was just too. You're being for the people out there, you're being trained to teach people about English literature, which is great, but you're trained to be a professor and how to be an educator. And I wanted to write. That was really what I discovered that I enjoyed most about as an undergrad, is that I would go and create scenarios, and I'd have dialogues. I'd have platonic dialogues analyzing a question rather than just writing a straight essay. And so I decided after I quit, I dropped out of grad school and started doing things as a writer. And just like what Keith said, I did all kinds of different things. Was an editor for a couple of different scholarly papers and newsletters and things like that. And then I got into librarianship and became an editor there, and became a chair of that program I mentioned, the metadata committee. And that was all fine. It all fed into it. I was writing all that time, but it was only that toward when I was approaching retirement that I had my first novel published, and I was just thrilled by that. That's what I really wanted to do, and that was 20 years ago.
It reminds me of the old Woody Allen adage, those who can do it, and those who can't teach.
Yeah, well, that's what it came down to. You sort of say that to yourself. Well, I want to be one of those that can do it. I'm wondering too, with life experience, do you feel like that gives you a leg up in a lot of how you write too? Do you feel like because you and obviously being in the library system, you probably read so many books and had so much
ability to absorb so much, in that aspect of storytelling. So I wonder if you feel like you have kind of a leg up because you have,
It's
some life
helped.
experience.
It's helped, but again, like Keith was saying, you got to be careful. He gets those, and I do the same thing. You get all these books, and you say, "I'm going to read them," and you just sit there because it interferes with your own writing.
Nice.
And you start sounding like other people. When you're starting out, you want to go and imitate the best, and that's good.
Yeah.
But then you develop your own style. And I have my own style. People like
awesome.
it. They say that it's really, it's easy to read and it keeps them engaged. Well, what more do you want if you're a storyteller? And so I just stick with that. And so I still read people, I don't just, I haven't sworn them off totally, but I don't, I've benefited from having that background, but it's really, if I may say so, took me years to get away from the academic writing to go and find my own voice. And that's what you really have to do if you're going to be a successful writer.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. And you really, I think the key element there is learning your own voice. Once you learn that you have one, you just, it's so much more. It feels like you're a writer at that point, right? You just feel like you found something,
Yeah. And you gotta, it's like any muscle, you got to do it every day.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then it gets it gets hard starting up again. You don't want to have too many days get in between. So you try, you're asking him about like things like, do you go work on a schedule? And I like a deadline as long as it's a reasonable one. I don't want to say don't have a turnaround in a week or something. But I mean, if you have if I have to meet a deadline, fine. I can break my project down into how many pages I have to write, and then meet it and send it off. But on the other hand, I like to have the freedom to go and experiment a little bit. And a lot of times when I say I write organically, I say to myself, I'm writing along, well, what would happen if they went and did this rather than that? And well, let's see where that goes. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You end up writing a chapter, that's terrible. And so you just drop it. But otherwise you say, oh, I never thought about that. That's how I got, when I got the responses, from my editors, said, boy, that took a 180-degree turn I wasn't expecting. Well, hey, that's what you want. You want people you want to keep them on their toes.
Yeah, you want them to keep turning the page.
Exactly. And if it goes 100, if it is, that's exactly what I don't, I didn't never saw that coming.
Yeah.
That's gold.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's rare gold. So it's nice when you have that.
Well, that's what I remember when I went to the Thriller Fest, a few years ago. I think it was, I can't remember now. I shouldn't even tell the anecdote, I suppose. But there was a very famous writer who was the guest host for the Thriller Fest, and the guy that was working with him, he was writing with them in conjunction. He actually did a lot of the grunt work, and the famous writer just basically gave him the outline. And he read the first half. He said, yeah, I got about 2/3 of the way through. And how does it look? And, okay, this is great, guys. The famous writer says, now turn it 180 degrees. What? It's just like that. But he said that's exactly what he needed to do. He had to go and put something in there, a twist that the reader wasn't expecting. And that, because that's a point where people can sort of get to the point, well, gee, when is this going to end? Or I can see it going where it's going, and they drop it. So you gotta insert that kind of stuff.
Nice. All right, my last question for you is, I'm curious, as somebody who does research, what's the most interesting thing that surprised you that you learned about vampires?
Wow. That how vulnerable they really are. They project this. They have all these trappings of sophistication and inevitability, and yet underneath it all, there's so many things. They're so vulnerable to so many things that it's amazing. They can't go out in the daytime. Although I know people have dealt with that and wrote around it so that they can actually move around in the daytime and stuff like that. Just like Superman can go and he can avoid the kryptonite. But they have what I think what makes them so appealing is because they're vulnerable like people, yet they're alien. Their vulnerabilities are alien. And so we can appreciate their vulnerability. We can also appreciate their strength. I think some of the strongest stories are the ones where you actually, you don't agree with them, but you're sympathetic to their situation.
Nice. I love that. Well, Bill, tell everybody where they can find these wonderful books of yours and how to get them.
Well, I'll be there. I'll be there at Author's Alley in Atlanta.
Everybody.
And then, my website is very simple. It's WilliamFeetzer, all one word, .com. And all lowercase, WilliamFeetzer.com.
Awesome. And I'll look forward to meeting you in person, sir, and talking to you.
Me too. I'll be glad to see you.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. And speaking of awesome, one of the main reasons why Multiverse works is because of the volunteers that happen to be a part of the Multiverse, and you can do that right now. And here is another reason why you should attend Multiverse, and then I'll be back to wrap things up.
And now, another reason why, among many, you should be attending Multiverse. Reason 1007. Become a volunteer. Volunteering offers a great way to see what goes on behind the scenes of a con, as well as make new friends and support the charitable efforts. On top of that, all volunteers who work at least 12 hours during or prior to Multiverse will receive a full 3-day membership, an exclusive Multiverse volunteer t-shirt, a collectible badge, and access to the volunteer-only party after the con shuts down. Multiverse could not exist without the dedicated help of the wonderful folks who volunteer their time and skills to make it all work. All people, interests, abilities, and skill levels are welcome. Applications are now open, so join us and become part of the team. We need you. Go to multiversecon.org and register to become a member of the Multiverse.
Yep, I said each and every week on this show, if that's not a reason to come and do this and be a part of what we're doing in October, then I don't know what is. But Multiverse is here, and we're getting closer and closer to it. So don't waste any time. If you want to get there, you can still do so. Like I said before, this is an opt time to go and grab a plane ticket and get there if you're not in the Georgia area. And if you're in the Georgia area or nearby, you should really consider taking the trek. It's worth it. Trust me. Of course, you know that I'm going to say that, but that is the truth. There is a reason why so many people want to talk to me about Multiverse and want to be a part of this show, and we're going to keep doing it. We've got a lot of great episodes ahead, and you'll want to stay tuned because at the end, the very last show, I have a really, really important guest and somebody who's going to really convince you if you haven't been convinced already. All right. Well, that being said, thank you everybody for joining us. Remember that it's always time to go indie now, and we'll see you next week.